All right, welcome everybody to the September 2021 episode or whatever of Every Second Matters. We go live once a month on the second day of the month for the idea, to maintain awareness of our Second Amendment. Luke is in here, one band Marine, and I've got links out to, I don't know, something like 30 people. We'll see who all shows up tonight. We'll go live for a while here, give them some time to join in if people are going to jump in. Because we do this on the second of each month, it happens on a different day of the week often and doesn't necessarily coincide with most people's schedule. So I send out the links in the morning and we see who all shows up. The last couple of months, we've had pretty decent conversations develop from the people that do show up. So let's see, Every Second Matters is an awareness campaign that was started back in 2013. At the end of the year, towards the end of the fight, the grassroots effort to resist the 23 executive actions that Obama had proposed in reaction to the atrocities back in 2012. So he came out with 23 executive actions that he proposed to backdoor, do some stuff to make gun owners responsible, I guess, take stuff out on gun owners or property as a reaction to crimes. So no individual, no person, no effort, no organization really took the lead to stop that. Instead, everyone was just sort of, in agreement that that was enough. I think enough Congress people were called, enough action was taken for the political strategists to figure out that had no teeth in public opinion. So the grassroots effort to resist those 23 executive actions was, it was successful, but it was also sort of evident. Like we could see that, the community had that power. And it's something that we didn't know we were going to be tested, and we didn't realize that we were tested until it happened. And like I say, the results were pretty cool. So at the end of that year, we started a bunch of us who had been having conversations towards focusing on that, I guess. Not like we got on every week and talked about it every day, but often the conversations that happened daily would focus on the Second Amendment efforts and things that worked and things that didn't, successes and failures and all the rest. And we had a pretty positive group of people at the time, I'd say. And like I say, a very active community of people were forming on YouTube in the comments, and that were creating content and consuming the content on a daily basis, and then having live conversations about news of the day and just things that were going on. I was thinking about it today because Luke's on here, and he was one of the people. It was actually in one of your live rooms that Every Second Matters was created. And then whenever we started thrashing it out, I think you opened some of those rooms intentionally just to give us time to kind of thrash out what we wanted to come up with or whatever eventually. But so I think it was because it was a time when YouTube was still new. YouTube started with this idea of you could put videos on the internet, and the videos were small and that lent themselves to little quick things like being kicked in the nuts or little cute kittens, just little tiny, what we would call TikTok stuff today. And that's all you could put on the internet. Technically, it just wouldn't fit on the internet. You couldn't watch it if it was any bigger than that because of internet connections and the ways that we used the internet back then. So as YouTube existed, as technology improved, it changed. And that's where that community came from. And I think a lot of those conversations that we had were the evolution of the same conversations that have happened in gun shops and gun shows and on the range and, at shooting events and that kind of thing throughout the years. It's just that they were happening instead of on the forums or on the, what were before the forums, the boards. There was different ways of communicating before YouTube came around, and YouTube gave us something different than Facebook because we could put so much more information into a video. And once we had the live conversation possibility with the Hangouts, We just had totally different, like, just a much more opportunity to have much more elaborate conversations, and it would all be archived, so it was useful conversations. And I think we were getting jazzed on that, and we saw that it worked. Instead of just being a bunch of tools to market each other or to bicker, we were using those tools to resist tyranny. At least that's how we saw it, right? And everybody, again, it wasn't like we all did what the NRA said, or we all did what the NRA didn't say, or we all did what some politician urged us to do. Everybody just did stuff, and it was possible to see the results of that stuff. I don't know if it's a factor of the smaller internet or just less stuff happening, so there was more evident when it did happen. But it was certainly it was an interesting time. So Every Second Matters was created through those conversations, a couple of conversations. I think it really started with people in college who were frustrated about open carry and the concept that you really can't get too many positive firearms owners laws in colleges, because the teachers are there forever, the administrators own the place and live there, and the students are barely there for 4 years, maybe a couple of years longer or shorter, depending on the student. But they're never there long enough, and even the alumni don't have enough invested to actually petition schools to allow freedom like that. So it was frustrating for the students that were in these conversations, and we were trying to come up with ways, at least that's how I remember it, we were coming up with ways of how they could deal with it. And I think that evolved into let's just do something more often than that. So I guess to start off, like say, we've got a bunch of invites out there. I'm about 6 minutes of blabbing in here, and we'll let it go for a bit here before we dig into anything difficult or really, topic related, to see if anybody else is going to utilize the links and jump in. But since Luke is in here, like say you were there, how do you remember the beginning of it all? It's been a while since you've been in Every Second Matters to relate it.
I remember a lot of what you just brought up for sure. As I remember sort of the forming of Every Second Matters, there was a drive within our own small community, which was primarily people doing Google Hangout gun chats. I remember the character of that being the first time that you could go to the gun shop BS Hangout, but you could do it nightly and with people from across the country. So we really got to share more state to state communications about what each state's people were facing and that type of thing. The Every Second Matters for me when we started it, there was 7 to 9 people in the conversation, and I think we sort of all agreed to not say that any one person owned it as the originator or the creator or however you want to look at it, which is fine. But the genesis of it for me, the intent of the conversation before it even became Every Second Matters, was we wanted something to do other than just sending off these blind, pre-filled out things to our Congress people to have effect in the community at all around us, that we could do on a repeated basis, that had a purpose and a time that we could all sort of recognize that we'd all be doing it at the same time period. So for me, that's what Every Second Matters was, and we honed in on the fact that, hey, there's a second every month. It'd be sort of cool to use that as the triggering event for these spontaneous activities amongst us, as whatever we did. For some people, that was open carrying that day. If they didn't normally open carry, like they normally conceal carry, but they'd open carry because they wanted people to see what they were about and educate. I tended to open carry more, but with my work, I can't carry at work. So with that, I actually had to ask permission, but I asked and got permission that on the 2nd, as a silent protest, I could wear an empty holster to work as my sort of silent protest to how I didn't agree with the federal agency I worked with banning or blocking of you carrying a firearm. So everybody has their own way of doing it. Just having the conversations on the 2nd is great. And anybody that you can educate, I think education was at the core of it, right? Educating people that didn't understand the Second Amendment, and also just having that monthly participation in the community where it keeps it fresh. Because At least prior to that, in my experience, the only time gun people talked about gun stuff to other people was when we were being attacked by somebody else, right? It was always in this sort of negative, reactive, hostile situation. And now we had a tool that didn't have to be tied to the last mass shooting that caused the politicians to come at us harder or some other negative social event. It could be a positive event, not tied to all those negative things. I mean, I think we all agree that those are horrendous things, but it's not traditional gun owners that are doing those things, but we get walloped over the head every time. So that's what the genesis of it is for me in my memory.
That was back in 2013. That's how we would have said it for sure. Now now you can say something like, in order to stop the marginalization of gun ownership to associate us with violent crime,
Mm-hmm.
we needed an opportunity to have a conversation that wasn't in reaction to their exploitation of atrocities. But yeah,
Uh-huh.
that's basically just because I've said it 1,000 times now since then. And we've had lots of different people join in over the years, and it's worked out pretty good. So I guess you haven't been following along. Obviously, there's no way to pay attention. No one's paid attention to every single one. There hasn't been one every single month for the last
Mm-hmm.
10 years now almost. But actually, it'll be 10 years next year, right? So there's been a
Yep.
lot of them, though, and a lot of people have taken it under their wing over the years. There's been generations of gun communities, at least that I'm aware of or participate in. I have no interest in participating with the exploiters, the people that jump in and were failed at some other industry, and they see that there's potential to exploit gun owners because we're not being sold this or that. So I've never participated with those people, but the people that create individual content, authentic people that are just participating online with sharing their interest or learning and going online to learn. I've
Mm-hmm.
always found a lot of interest in that because I find new types of gun owners, new types of guns to get interested in, new reasons to be interested in them in the first place. Super interesting for me, at least. That's what I really like about guns is how ingrained they are in the culture and how much history we have to them in so many different ways. But so that's at least one of the ways I really like guns, and that's something that the internet has helped with. But I think you also clued on that um, part of it was we wanted to change the dynamic or change the narrative where, like you said, nobody ever asked us anything. Nobody ever addressed gun owners unless it was after an atrocity and we knew the playbook, and everybody does know the playbook. They even say the playbook every time it happens. They go, now we have to pull out the old playbook. And now
Mm-hmm.
it's the only time we ever talk about it. And they act as if it's somehow our fault or, they lay that trip on us. So our purpose was to not change the world, but to just start doing something and to
Change
invite others to participate.
change the narrative and also people's perception of gun owners, right? So I'm going to illustrate something that happened in my state since I've been away. Really tore me up, but it sort of alliterates the public perception of gun owners. Okay, so we had an initiative on the ballot from the anti-gun crowd that basically said, sign this initiative into law because these gun owners can buy guns illegally off the internet and they have this gun show loophole and you should stop them. They're evil people with how they handle their transactions with firearms, right? Which we all know was total BS. We weren't breaking the law. We were doing everything within the law, but they set a narrative forward, right? So other people in our community, we got a second initiative on the ballot, and it essentially said we have a great state constitution about firearms law. The firearms law is held by the state, not by the counties and the municipalities, i.e., King County for us is the biggest county in our state. There, that one county has as much population as the whole rest of the state. And I bring this up because when it was voted on, um, the anti-gun message won, but 60 to 65% of the people that put that ballot that we didn't want into law also voted for how we worded our initiative, that there is no gun problem and we should just leave law as it was, right? So that means that it was only 1/3 of the people that didn't really understand that they were being fed a message that put that into law, right? And we got to figure out how to better change the perception in the community of us. Um, and obviously, this is a great tool for it, and there's other things, but it was that small of a margin, honestly. And then the other thing that I'll just quickly add on that, I don't want to make it all political tonight, but the margin that was passed by, if the 20% of voters that don't bother to go out on one side of the political parties, because our state is technically a blue state, they always sort of win in the big things. If that other 20% had actually come out and voted in like spirit, they probably wouldn't have passed the law, right? So they've got us defeated in that we got people that aren't even participating in their only thing they have left to do in voting. And then just by wording, you got people, the same people that were willing to leave the law alone because they understood that we didn't have this huge gun problem, voting for the other initiative that was feel good, that we're going to close this loophole where they're doing these crazy gun show transactions and could potentially buy up the internet, which was already against the federal law to do interstate transactions through the internet. So
without getting into the details, you're talking about 1689, right?
Yeah,
So
I apologize.
It's a couple of years ago now. And what you're talking about is Bloomberg, one dude, 20th richest man on the planet, paid all the marketing people in Washington and told them, here's my goal, make it happen. And then they created messages, and it doesn't matter what the messages are, they created messages to confuse and to get the signatures that they needed to make it a ballot initiative. And then once it was on the thing, it was another set of messaging to get people to vote for it. And the results are, like you said, evidence that it was, it's just a way to use the system. So one thing that I've seen as a reaction to that is people getting upset with the system and then saying, let's not participate because we didn't like how the results were of the game. And then there's other people that are going to do other strategies and stuff. So that's one aspect of it, is that it was a new strategy by the antis, and one guy in particular using, not even that much money, but some money to purchase opinion, right? And then make that into law through not having to convince or do anything with representatives, but instead manipulate the public opinion. So we know that that's a new strategy, and it was successful because they did it as soon as it worked in Washington. They did it in Nevada, and they were so stupid they did it in Nevada so that it was like copy and pasted or something, so that it wouldn't even work in Nevada. And there's whoever told them, no, we're not going to be able to make this law. So we know it's a strategy that they're using.
Yeah, the next cycle they took it up in Oregon, like you said, almost verbatim, same way.
Yep.
And well, in Oregon, the part that really confuses me on this, and this is where, like, I personally support Second Amendment Foundation. Some people do, some don't. That's another conversation. But I don't even know that a ballot initiative-based law is constitutional according to our state constitution, because it said specifically in the state constitution, this is the jurisdiction of the state, and the only way to change it would be 2/3 of the state legislature passing this stuff. And even through all of this stuff, we've never had the majority in that Congress to do it. And I hope that they're working on finding a case to sort of run it through there, but it's always reactive, right? Even if it is unconstitutional, we got to get somebody convicted of a thing there, then they have to become the case, and then the case has to go through the state courts, and then they have to go to the Supreme Court to get it overturned. And it's just so infuriating.
Yeah, well, and then they're going to do something similar in another state, and it's going to have another procedure that's different and requires the citizens of that state to do it. So, being aware that that's a thing now, and they're not limited to how many types of attacks they want to bring, what weapons they want to use. they don't care about tactics, so they don't care. I mean, they don't care about ethics or morals, so they're going to use whatever tactics they want, and we acknowledge that. We should know that. So I don't understand. I'm not. I don't think there's any need to spend any time going, "Ow!" Like, "Ouch, that hurt." Competent fighters acknowledge a blow and move on, unless it's something that broke a bone or something. When you have to tend to the wound, you keep moving. I would tend to. I'm not. There's no way to answer because you just brought up a point or whatever. But I was thinking as you're saying that, the way I look at it is we're not in a game of sports where it's like there's however many innings or quarters and then it's over and the tie is the score is the score. Instead, we're running an orchard or mowing the lawn, and let's say that we have a strategy this year. We're going to fertilize, or we're going to do something, and we're going to move something over here and get more shade or more sun, and it is successful or it's not. It doesn't mean that strategy is going to be successful for everyone's orchard or for all parts of the orchard, right? But I like to think of this as more long game, and we're tending the crops. We're tending liberty, we're tending freedom. We took it from our parents, we're giving it to our kids. Ideally, we figure out the best stuff that our parents used. We see the tactics that our adversaries are using. We come up with efficient strategies to deal with it so that it's less stressful on us, or the least amount of stress on us, and the most effective deterrent to our adversaries. And we look at it that there is no finish line, there is no end of the game with a score. Everybody that gets frustrated, it seems like they're like, "Oh, it's over." Well, what the hell are you talking about? It's over. Unless you're going to burn down the orchard and become something else, then what I'm saying, it ain't over. The system's still there. The humans that are assholes have some limit of how long they're going to be there, and you can either be prepared for what's next or working towards that. And anyway, so getting back to specifics, like you were saying, you've got some issues in Washington, and unfortunately, you're not the only one. We've got issues in California that have been persistent. Your stuff is leached down into Oregon, and they took it. It leached into Nevada, and they've allowed some of it. We have other issues in New Jersey, in Massachusetts, Connecticut. I could go on and on. New York, right? There's littler issues in other states compared to those big ones. But the best thing I think we can do is become aware of them at a level where we don't get overwhelmed, and then understand what resources we have and when it would be effective to distribute them, and realize that we're volunteers. So figure out ways to let people know, I'm going to say if you're watching the news on TV, it's a news show, they're going to flip over to the weather, and then you're going to know where the storms are and where the droughts are and where the whatever other kind of weather is. Well, if we had something like that, one of the national level organizations seems ripe to offer that, instead of saying, blah, 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 waste our time or distract us with everything. Just here's what's happening. Here's the weather map. If we're in Arizona and we're not dealing with something right now, and, we can talk to ourselves and go, hey, what if we, half of us help Oregon and half of us help New Jersey? And then New Mexico says, what if we send a third to California, help a third of our people or resources to California, XYZ? As soon as, we've got potential to do that kind of stuff as individuals, and you don't have to have some overall strategy or traffic controller doing it all. You just start doing it. Somebody will come along and take credit and then offer assistance. But I'll shut up and let you guys talk again.
Yeah, I want to welcome Ghost Tactical. Sorry, we were sort of heavy into it when you rolled in.
It's all good, brother. It's all good.
Bring yourself into the conversation, and then we can sort of.
Oh, have you guys met before? I didn't even think of this. Have you guys met before?
Not really.
Not really. I think we've been in the same room. We've been in the same room a couple times, a couple years back, but yeah, not officially.
We always like to have Marines around. So one bad Marine was the first one, and then Ghost is the recent one.
Okay.
Yeah. So the interesting thing is what you guys are talking about is kind of what we've done here in Arkansas is for 25 plus years. We have our legislative session is every other year. So it's a legislative session. The next year is a fiscal session, blah, 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 blah. Well, for 25 plus years, every legislative session, they try to get constitutional carry passed, and it never, ever worked. Even though even the Democrats in Arkansas have guns, they didn't want constitutional carry. That being said, the Republicans finally got smart back in 2015, and they created what they call the enhanced concealed carry permit, which lets you carry in different places like restaurants, on public universities, this, that, and the other. So it's kind of the next notch. The same year, they cut the permit fees in half. And then, so that was the next step. That what they decided to do is, they, instead of going for all of it at once, let's take a play from the playbook of the other side. They don't ever go for everything at once. They go piece by piece until you don't even recognize what the whole looks like anymore. So the Republicans here decided, okay, we're going to go piece by piece. We're going to add this thing. We're going to cut fees in half. We're going to make it a lot easier, this, that, and the other. Then finally in 2019, they came back and said, so we've already done all this other stuff. We might as well just go ahead and have constitutional carry, and it passed with flying colors. So, it's nice to see that maybe, like you said earlier, if we start using the tactics of the other side against them, instead of at the national level, instead of saying, let's, I would love to say, hey, let's get rid of the NFA. I would love that. Well, let's go take it piece by piece. Let's start with the 4473. Then let's go to suppressors. Then let's go to whatever and start going piece by piece until the NFA looks completely different. And they sit there and say, well, we've already gotten rid of half the stuff. We might as well get rid of all of it. So that might be something we think about, is just trying to use their tactic against them and go piece by piece.
Yeah. So not to totally change the argument, I totally agree with what you're saying on piecemeal. I think one of the things we have to recognize in this is we have 3 to 5% of the people pushing the buttons for the people that are voting against us to sell this narrative. And I think, I don't know, in a way, we have this mental image that, oh, if we can just help them understand how not of a threat it is, it won't be a problem. But unfortunately, those 3 to 5% of people want us disarmed for whatever their purposes are. And I don't know how, because we can't shut those 3 to 5% down. We don't have the coffers to do it, right? So we got to figure out how to bring the will of the people that are, the most politically correct way I know to put it is uneducated voters, get them educated, right? Partly just educated to how much they're being used, right? But I don't know.
That same 5% on the other side that wants no guns, period. On our side, we have that same 3 to 5%. I mean, you call it what you want, but on each side, on any issue, there is that 5 to 10%. It's the 80 to 90% of America that makes up the vast majority of voters. And so, yeah, if we can figure out on any issue, no matter what it is, you're not going to change that 5 to 10%'s mind on their side, and they're not going to change the 5 to 10% on our side. It's that 80 to 90% that where elections are won in any given issue. And you're right. We got to figure out a way to educate everyone. And I think, honestly, we didn't even have to do it. I think a lot of people have educated themselves in the last year and a half. This is a time, if we had control of the House, Senate, and all of that, I think we could get some stuff done right now, because there is a lot of people that educated themselves last year with firearms that never would have before.
How did they educate themselves?
I think ultimately, they just realized that I never liked guns or whatever. I've talked to many, many, many people that said they never liked guns, and they bought guns, and then they educate themselves after that, saying, "Okay, I bought a gun."
I know. I don't mean how did they do the mind flip, but I'm saying, like, literally, how do you think they educated themselves? Because I'm guessing they mostly did it the same way.
The people that I've talked to, honestly, asked other gun owners and said, "Hey, I've never really been a gun guy, but I like maybe something to protect myself. There's some crazies out there.
If they know,
can we go to the range and shoot?" A lot of them went to the range and shot for the first time, and they never held a gun. They hated guns, but they'd never shot one. So I think, ironically, the getting them to the range is the first step.
I mean, maybe if they are lucky enough to know somebody who goes like a gun person and then felt comfortable enough to ask them, because they might know a gun person and not like them or not feel comfortable with them. But I thought you were going to say internet, because that's what I was going after. Is that all those people that did the mental flip and said, well, I'm getting a gun for whatever reason. And I'm almost positive it was for self-defense, right? Like, or I'm gonna also acknowledge that there's some people that went, this is a good investment. Now's the time to buy guns. Or I'm not gonna be able to buy guns again. This is a good time to buy guns just in case. And that's still valid, and those are part of it. It's not all paranoid people that are afraid of each other that bought these guns. Some people are just like, I'm not going to be able to buy this 10 years from now. I'm buying it now just in case. Just the same way they brought propane and helium and anything else the industry or the news tells them not to buy right now, or whatever. So anyway, there's lots of reasons people buy guns. I was just going to say, I bet you a lot of them went online, looked on YouTube, right? And in that respect, the work that people have done, since back in the day, posting videos of themselves doing their thing, being nerdy or knowledgeable or effective or inefficient, and all the variety that's there and it's available. Even there's blah 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 search issues and shadow bans, blah blah blah. Who cares about all that? The stuff is out there, and it's just individuals. In other words, they didn't all go read a manual. They didn't all go to Cult and say, can I read your safety manual? Now I'm buying a gun, right? We know that they went online, they looked around at fellow peers, and the thing is, beyond that, they didn't all go look at Marines and go, oh, okay, I've seen Marines in basic training, I'm buying a gun, right? They went in and looked at like whoever they are. If I'm this and that and the other thing, they went and looked for other people that are this and that and the other thing, playing with guns. They found them. Those people were normal. And then they asked them the same questions they asked you. Then they were the gun people they knew. And because of the internet's the way it is, they felt comfortable if that person's normal. And I'm guessing just because I watch, that's what I do, is pay attention to communities online that are focused on guns, the authentic ones, not the bullshit fake ones. And that's what it is. I'm not saying I've seen everything, but you know what I'm saying? I believe that's how it probably went down, is most people didn't know.
Did anybody else lose him, or is it just me?
He went Mr. Robot there for a second.
Boom. Am I breaking up?
Yeah, you're a robot. But
back.
No, I think you're 100% right. Is the internet has been, will be a huge tool for anything. YouTube in itself is the second largest search engine in the world. Well, guess what? That is where people go to fix washing machines. That's where they go to fix lawnmowers. That's where they go to learn how to cook meals. And oh, by the way, they learn how to hold a gun, how to load a gun, how to clean a gun, how to shoot a gun. So yeah, anyone out there that's putting videos out there, I think that they need to be cognizant of the idea of your video might reach someone brand new, and they need to take that seriously for sure.
We almost need a community drive to do some welcome to new gun owners type videos across the platform.
Oh, they're all over the place, yeah.
So am I back again? Yeah. So I don't agree with Ghost. I don't agree with Ghost only because I don't want it to be this fake Stepford wives, like all gun owners are welcoming you. Like, let's just leave it real. And I like having everything we've ever done online, at least everything I've ever done online, is bickering and regular and real and sloppy, because I'm regular and real and I bicker. That's how I grow and learn. And I'm not trying to put on airs and be fake. I don't care about fake. I know there's people that dig it, and there's only people that only accept fake. So I'm not discouraging people to put out whatever they want, but I'm just saying, I don't think everybody's got to worry about their P's and Q's every minute, because real people are going to learn from their weird Aunt Fred as much as they're going to learn from their proper Aunt Sally.
So I'm coming from the perspective of, if you go put a search up on YouTube and basically try and get gun content, you're going to get this huge pie of people blowing stuff up with tannerite or whatever, and you're going to have these ostentatious things from some of the bigger channels or whatever. But if you look at the core of what we put out as a gun community on YouTube, there's not that much that falls really tight into that. How do we educate a new gun owner without bringing politics into it?
Okay.
To safely, buy, purchase, carry, and become a good gun owner. And
I got you. And that's
the reason that I say that is, like, in my 3D printing community, I think a lot of, some people know, some people don't. One of my recent passions is the 3D printing community. I'm very well known there. But I built uh, almost a cottage community within 3D printing that is totally geared towards welcoming new people, how to educate them and give them a place to talk where they don't get the newbie shame, right? And I'm not
Sure.
saying we have
So,
to do
dude,
that same model here, but
we
I
got
really
that.
don't
That's
see
what I'm
anything
saying.
close.
So yeah, you've described it. I got you, and you're just not watching it. But yeah, there's tons of that. That's what I was gonna say. I don't agree with either one of you guys, but I agree with both of you. So like Ghost said, there's tons of that. And ever since, well, there was already a little bit of that before Every Second Matters, because that's what we all did, is Welcome to Guns, right? And I got sick of that because I already did Welcome to Guns videos. And then the next group of people did Welcome to Guns, and they're doing it wrong because they don't even know what guns are. Then the third group of people said, I don't know what a gun is, but Welcome to Guns. And they're way off because they're listening to the wrong people in the first place. Then the fourth or fifth generation comes along and they're listening to their grandpas, so they were better. It's like there's all these different generations of gun owners, and there's different groups of gun owners. People that come in as youngins who are looking to have like just fun on the weekends, but then they turns out they can be serious about it and pay for college. That's a different gun owner than a mom who's doesn't have somebody to ask and feels the need to protect herself, or a mom who doesn't have anybody to ask but is interested in bullseye shooting and wants to know, how do I even start doing that, because I saw something triggered it, made me want to start doing it. And that's different than an old guy who everybody assumes knows what's going on and has to jump into a community where everybody looks at him and goes, that guy must know what's going on or he's weird. And then that guy's got to start asking. Imagine that kind of situation. So yeah, dude, there's so many Welcome to Guns that it got frustrating for me to keep up with them because there's so many of them. There's no way to see, and I mean, there's no way to control any of that, but you can start to go down the Welcome to Guns paths and go, oh wow, this one went straight to Welcome to Guns. Would you like to buy our insurance? It's like, yikes. Welcome to Guns. Let's buy accessories. Like, Welcome to Guns. Here's an awesome path that takes you to training and awareness and awesome stuff. So there's tons of it. There's so much of it that, I mean, I don't even know what it's like for somebody just jumping online, but I do know there are people just jumping online right now.
I guess what this really illustrates is how well YouTube particularly is vetting what you will see, right?
Well, there's no way you can see Welcome to Guns, dude. You've been looking at too much gun stuff over the years. Your YouTube history precludes you from seeing the stuff that a person who's new to YouTube. Now, if you jumped on with a new account, you might be able to experience it.
All right. So my apologies to those that have done a lot of great legwork. It sounds like we got a good base of that.
Oh no, and I'm not trying to say that at all. I'm just saying that, yeah, there's definitely tons of it. But like you just said too, there might be other stuff going on in other communities, and there's no way to know. Dude, what do they say? How many years a video gets uploaded every hour? I mean, there's tons of it. And then think of languages. Mm-hmm. Clover was just talking about something yesterday where I think it was yesterday when he was talking about doing stuff internationally. Like if you did stuff with CCW internationally, they all yawn because they can't carry. They don't care about carrying very much. Few of them do, at least. But if you put something up about a stupid shotgun that they can have, all of a sudden you get millions of views from international views because it's something that they can actually care about or participate in.
Right. All those countries where basically those that are rural can have a shotgun or something that's seen as a tool instead of a weapon. They have somebody they can be in kind with.
The second largest demographic as far as country behind America, which is obviously the vast majority of it, is Brazil. And I'll get Brazilian comments all the time in Portuguese, and I have to go and translate them and all that. But I tell you what, there's a lot of people in Brazil that are watching gun stuff right now.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the day, there was a book that came out, and I forgot what it was called. And I don't remember if it was Alan Corwin's publishing thing that did it, but I want to think it was Alan Corwin's publishing. I don't think he wrote the book, but I think he distributes it. But it was called something about international gun countries or something ranked. I don't know what it was, but it was using some kind of data from either probably UN or some kind of international data that was ranking all these different countries, and it was super surprising. And whenever it came out, a bunch of us were talking about it because it was interesting, and it was what you wouldn't expect, unexpected. Because the United States isn't all that. There's a lot of countries that have better gun laws than us, except that those are typically countries that don't have any laws. So most people don't want to live there, but they have way better gun laws than us because they don't have any laws. So if you count that, then there's lots of countries that have way better laws than us. But then there's other countries that are like quote unquote regular countries that aren't third world or have laws and stuff that still have awesome laws, like that one Finland or whatever, where they can just go buy suppressors and stuff. There's countries where they just have different, like Canada can have barrel shotguns, right? But
Or
anyway,
the Swiss where you're required to maintain one firearm at your household.
I think that ended, but I don't know. And that's the thing is, I was going to say that book was interesting because it kind of covered all that. I don't know if it was a page per country and it talked about whatever their gun facts were. But the thing is, whenever that book did come out is probably the last time I was interested in paying attention to other countries. Like, I think it's important. We probably should. And I don't think we pay enough attention to how we lead the way in the United States as far as gun freedom and property ownership for other countries who look up to us. And not that we need to brag about it or feel good about ourselves, but think about all the resources that are out there. We moan and groan like there's only so much pie, and there is only so much pie in the United States, technically, although it's a shit ton of pie, right? But if we're going to bicker over, oh, look at how much pie they're getting and they're getting, blah, blah, blah. Well, there's a lot of people out there. And if someone were to petition to the rest of the world, like, hey, you want to help, pour some of that money into some of those resources into gun stuff, I suspect that's probably some of the reason the NRA's got a big pile, because they probably are able to pull some of that international stuff in, and it probably some of the giant wildlife things, I'll bet you get some international attention as well.
Yeah, they understand that if gun rights fall here, it falls worldwide, I think is the point you're making, and I totally agree. So just really quick, because this is the Every Second Matters get together, I want to challenge the people in the chat. I know I haven't seen a ton of people in there, but there's other people that are watching that aren't chatting. I would love to see you guys put what you did today. It doesn't have to be super spelled out, but what one thing that you did today personally to either celebrate or participate in Every Second Matters. That would be awesome.
So that's something that we used to do back in the beginning. And a couple of people still do that, but there's been different like waves of it for a while there. Everybody did their own show, right? Like there was dozens of shows every second. That was kind of interesting. And then it would be like shows on different platforms. So that was kind of cool. And then it was all like wearing shirts for a while. Everybody got a shirt and everybody was wearing a shirt around, and then take pictures of their shirt and that kind of thing. And then sometimes it's the like putting your gun next to a shirt or next to a patch or something, or doing that kind of thing. And then, like I say, it's gone through kind of phases. It's been kind of neat. A couple of times I've gone back and tried to archive aspects of it, but it was only so much time.
Oh, absolutely. And I appreciate you continuing to carry the torch with it. I was absent from the community for a while. I lightly alluded to that in another discussion that you and I had, but it wasn't totally voluntary, that break for a little while. I mean, I did make a choice, but it had to do with maintaining my employment with a couple of things that happened all at the same time. But I think that it speaks a lot for you and for the idea that it's still around, right? We can all agree that we need to be advocating at least once a month, if not more. And so
there's times when I quit doing it completely because other people were doing it, and I was like, I don't need to own it, right? It's an awareness campaign. It ain't mine, except for I got to pay the bill on the domain name or something. Like there's really nothing to own on it. So it was for a while there, like I say, everybody was doing their own shows. So I just stepped off. I'm like, I don't need to do a show. I'll just jump in other people's shows or whatever. And then there's times where I'm just busy and nobody gave a shit about it. And I'm like, well, you know what? Nobody else gives a shit about it. Back in like maybe year 3 through 5, there was times when nobody gave a shit about it. And I'm like, I don't win nothing by carrying this torch or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it's still alive as long as there's people around that care.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing is it's modeled after Pink Pistols, where there was nothing to join. So there is nothing to join. There's nothing to do. There's no obligation. There's various traditions, but there's no obligation to abide by them. But and there's everything. If anything, there's an encouragement to explore it and play with it a little bit within the realms of like being decent with it. And then also, I think in the beginning we talked. I remember us having endless debates and discussions about like if it should be, because we all thought we were actually building a thing that would turn into a mechanism or something. So we didn't want it to be like, oh, let me put it on a shirt with a bunch of FUs on it, or let me put it on a shirt that says sponsored by so and so. Like we had all these discussions, and it turned out none of that even mattered or whatever, of course. But that was part of it, is having a group of people that were at the time super dedicated, interested, and motivated. And then for me, at least, and for everybody else, I suspect, seeing how that aged, died, decayed, turned into whatever, evolved, whatever you want to call it, happened. And then, the, I don't want to say like the resurrection, but it's sort of like if you had something in like I don't know, like you carve a interesting thing out of a tree stump or whatever, and you sit it somewhere, and then you put a time lapse on it. The stump is going to eventually change, the weather and everything, but around it, everything's changing really fast. The seasons are changing, sort of like how Every Second Matters has been. It's been an entity that exists that if you look at it at any time, you can kind of see everything changing around it. But because it's so simple and nothing, it's sort of the same, right? I mean, it's kind of changed a little bit, but for the most part, it's just that logo and the idea of getting together on the second or doing something on the second. So, it's sort of just sitting there, and it's given me, at least, and I'm assuming other people that have thought about it, a barometer, like a measuring tape to put everything else to, right? Because it's kind of unchanged and just sitting there. Everything else gets levels of volume and stress and everything. I mean, think about all the stressful stuff that's happened and how excited people get when the news gets us all worked up about stuff. I think that's part of what it's for too. I thought originally we wanted it to be a consistent thing that was every second. It was there every month. So no matter if the news was paying attention to guns or not, in a good way or a bad way, like we're always there. That was, I think when you were mentioning that before, that was another part of it. Like somebody, we were thinking, I don't remember who was the student. Somebody was a student and they were like, oh, I want to do X, Y, Z. I want to have this shirt on, and then be accused of being a Yahoo. So if there's this national level, everybody does it across the whole country, and I'm just participating in a thing, then I'm not a Yahoo. I'm just a participant in a bigger thing. And it was sort of that too, like give people not an excuse, but something to participate in, so that if they did have to defend their position, they could say, hey, I'm not just doing this out of nowhere. I'm part of a bigger thing.
And in a way, it pulls to another thing that I'm almost reticent to bring it up, but I'm going to bring it up because I think it's at a core of something that can be very divisive within the gun community at all, and that's politics, right? We end up fighting these battles on the political lines, but we have people on both sides, both parties, independents, they're all gun owners, right? And we're letting the politics side of it keep us disorganized enough that these things are trolloping on us, right? And Every Second Matters, when we started it up, I remember specifically people started getting political with it. And I'm like, it can't be that. It can't be associated with any party, or it'll be the end of it, right? And I think it stood the test of time that way. But
yeah, you know what? Actually, think about it. You know what really screwed with it for a minute? When Black Lives Matter came around, because it looks really fucking close, and it's just, the logo is similar. We were first, but you know what I mean? Like when that came around, it got, different, because it was like, oh shit, it looks really close, and it says matters.
Yeah, I really hadn't put a whole lot of thought into that because I wasn't watching the social part of Every Second Matters. I think about it every second when it comes around, which has been, an anchor for me over time, right? My son still wears the patches that we got from you. We have one or two of the stickers still on some vehicles, and there's still Every Second Matters up in my barbershop, right? And when I'm there, I get a chance to talk about that with other people, and it's a chance to grow the community, right? So it'll never die if we don't let it die, and that it's apolitical is a boon, right? Because I see that as one of the hugest hurdles in getting the U.S. at all sort of unmessed up on the opinion on guns and the laws on guns. Because if we could get along and just bury that political hatchet, we probably represent a bigger majority than any other individual entity within the U.S. Well, I don't know. So, I mean, presumably there's what, over 450 million guns in the U.S. And I don't know how that directly translates to owners of guns, because like some of us have way more multiples than others. But I'm hard pressed to think of any other individual personal identity that many people share, but yet we're
There's about as
divided.
many
We can't get
guns.
something.
They say there's about as many guns as there are vehicles.
Yeah. But the e-ticket ride is we figure out how to get past whatever those issues are that might divide us at the poll to get our gun rights that should not be politicized straightened out.
You got an interesting place you are in an interesting place right now, because you're an adult and you're aware, right? And you're not like a little kid, but you were aware of what was going on. And then when you went away and came back, quite a few stuff's changed. So when we started Every Second Matters, it was like 2013. It's not like there was a date where you said, oh, I'm flipping this thing over. But at some point, everybody's patterns and frequency in the chats and stuff, and I'm sure it was work or something, the frequency goes down and then whatever. So I don't know what year that was, but in 2015 is when we really started to see a bunch of change. And I suspect it had to do with a greater societal ripple that we were experiencing in Every Second Matters. The impetus for Every Second Matters was our little group of people in the gun community witnessing that grassroots resistance and the power of grassroots, and then not wanting that to just disappear, we wanted to grab something that we could hold on to and say, remember this happened, this worked, and we can continue this. We should be able to grab it anytime we need it and do it again. And there was other people that saw that, and maybe not from guns. I'm super gun centric, so there could have been thousands of other things happening in the world that I'm just not paying attention to. But there was other organizations that came around that all kind of started. But because there's just, it's just not like anybody's fault. It's just the way that the world is. There's no, in the way, okay, let's blame the NRA. So everybody wants to blame the NRA. It's not as though the NRA said, oh, here, new organization, let me lift you up and put you on the biggest shelf possible that you can be on. Oh, here, new organization, let me do the same for you. And then, they weren't doing that, but they also weren't tasked with doing that. Nobody was asking them to do that. So yeah, they didn't do it, but they were the only ones that could have done it. And so since that didn't happen, all these new organizations, and again, I'm just using that as an example of the alternative reality. But in reality, since that kind of free ride doesn't exist, when you're a new organization, you have to learn how to be a new organization. You have to get bigger. You have to have a direction. You have to have a way to keep your team on that goal and to work together, and it has to be successful. And then the outside conditions have to be appropriate that let you thrive, right? And that started to happen in 2015. And it isn't probably till 2019, 4 years later, that those organizations existed long enough and were successful and grew large enough to stand up and stand around and look at each other and go, oh, we're not alone. Holy crap. Other people just started, have grown, and are now established in this amount of time also. And they just about started to communicate and figure out what they could do together. And then 2020. So SHOT Show was never going to bring people together. It just doesn't bring Second Amendment people together, I should say. There's just too many distractions, and it doesn't invite them, and it doesn't make a space for them. It did in 2019. But what is it, 2019? No, it was 2020 that they did once. But they've never made an effort on that. They haven't seen it as a thing. They just never have done it. There's no other place that does it except for technically the Gun Rights Policy Conference. But it went virtual in 20 and it's going virtual this year. So they've given up that potential. But that's frustrating because we did have quite a few groups that sort of came up, I want to say blossomed, even though it's probably degrading because they probably think that they're all adults doing a good job. And I just think of them as like little babies. But they are little baby organizations compared to big organizations that we've had for a while. Those big organizations that we have for a while think the world is back what it was like when they started. And it ain't. The world's different. These new organizations understand that and grew up in like the mud. And now there's a whole new group of organizations that are, little zygote embryo, pupa squirting around in the water, but they're getting ready to start blooming up too. So we've got a lot. And I guess I started this whole thing with Luke, you're in an interesting spot because you're aware of what was the very sparse little stuff we had back in the day. All we had back when we started Every Second Matters was NRA, GOA, SAF. And FPC was just starting and it didn't do anything yet. So we had 3 big organizations for the most part that actually did anything and that were on the radar. We still had naggers sucking money out of us, but nobody knew it. That leech. And then we had a couple other organizations that weren't doing it.
I was aware of them, but they weren't on my support list.
Well, okay. But anyhow, saying is when you start to look around, you're going to have a unique perspective because most everybody else I know already knows all these other organizations, has been aware of them, and their radar is just a whole bunch of little dots where your radar screen has always been like a couple of big dots. You're about to once you start exploring, you're about to figure out, I suspect you're going to go, whoa, like look at all these different areas where back in the day we would go, what would be cool if there was somebody that covered this. Well, now there's 4 or 5 organizations that cover this and they bicker amongst themselves as to, how to do it best and that kind of thing. Yeah, it's really neat. Everything except for we have no Hispanic gun coverage at all. And that's shameful. We have, there's 2 organizations, but they get no support, and both of them are babies. And then we have nothing for old people, which is, again, disgraceful. We have the largest aging population ever, and we don't have nothing like a AARP for gun owners.
Yeah, unfortunately, just by people's predisposition to how to rate people, they get categorized as FUDs when they could be active participants and one of the biggest resurgences of interest in the hobby with all their retirement and free time and energy that they can put together. Putting their
stories down on the internet so it's there for their grandkids and for everybody. They could be helping each other and kids could be helping them, right? And then you've got self-defense. These old people are all victims and whatever. AOW, get rid of it. Let them have canes and let them have walkers and let them have little squeezy things that are, defense things. Get rid of lead, give them some kind of a plastic, dense plastic material or something that they can use as a projectile or something else altogether. But yeah, there's so much that old people could be the benefits of, I guess. And then get rid of the ADA or get rid of the suppressors so that they don't have to worry about their hearing. Yeah. Make guns a lot lighter, make them out of plastics and stuff so guns are lighter.
That whole suppressor thing, if we could get one video to show the whole world and make them watch it, or at least the whole US, show them how much it isn't like TV where it goes toot when they shoot it, they would not care to have us have them. I mean, there's other countries where it's considered polite because you're not creating noise pollution when you're at the range, right?
Well, there's countries out there that don't allow you to shoot at the range without a suppressor.
They make your gun a foot longer. As soon as you shoot it once, it's like 1,000 degrees of heated pipe at the end of your gun. So there's no way you're putting it back in a holster in your pants or anything. And it's not that quiet. Even the smallest bullet barely gets quiet, and you can't stop what noise it makes when a bullet hits something. So whenever you shoot a suppressed gun at something, it sounds like a bullet hitting something. You can't suppress that.
No. I mean, I think you could get close to what they do in the movies with a CB cap with a big-ass suppressor and whatever, but the thing would be traveling about the velocity of a pellet gun.
Yeah, it would be ineffective. And the best part is one of their arguments for suppressors is then the sure shot system that triangulates gunfire can't find the criminals. And the best part about that is that that's a Chinese company and it's bad tech that doesn't even work. And it was the marketing guy or the sales guy or something was Chipman for a couple of years. So bring that on, you dummies. Like, try to bring that argument up.
Yeah. for sure.
All right. Well, we're an hour in. Barbecue came in here. Coast is in here. One Bad Marine's in here. And I don't know. We can go for 2 hours for 2A, or I think, am I running into somebody now?
I have no idea what the local thing was. There's some. I got a notice from somebody at 8 o'clock.
Well, back in the day, everybody was decent, and they would all have like their nights and their times, and then we'd stack shows. Like there'd be 2 or 3 shows each night, except maybe on a slow night there'd be only 2, and then there'd be an after chat. No matter what, there was always an after chat. Every single night there was live conversation off air. Tonight or nowadays, people don't care. Corking is the norm. They just do shows whenever they feel like. Yankees live, regular Gun Guys live, and Night Strikes live. But I don't care about corking any of them. So,
and
so I must have missed something. So I remember Quark. Did he just go renegade and run over top to other people's showtimes, and that's why it's called corking?
No, he did it once, and that's why it's called corking.
Oh, okay. He's being punished forever for doing it once.
I can't. It's not my fault. He just did it,
Yeah.
and then it got said, and then it never got stopped being said. I don't think anybody.
It's funny how those things start.
Yep.
Like getting DJ'd.
Sandhills is live right now.
Welcome, Guns and Barbecue, and I'm totally good to continue on. I'm stuck at a hotel with nothing to do other than go back to watching YouTube videos on whatever algorithm they give me. But yeah, if we want to keep going, I'm good.
Yeah, pleasure to be in a chat with you, One Bad Marine. I'm kind of new compared to the rest of you guys, but in the last couple of years, I've gotten to hear your name come up.
He's been live for an hour. He's been corking me. So, no, Clover's got a thing tomorrow. Then today's the 2nd. Okay. So yeah, I don't care. I was going to. I don't really have topics, but I was going to bring up some of the stuff I accidentally discovered this week when I was minding my own business. Somebody posted. I posted something actually, and then they posted to my post. Where is it? Something in here about. All right, I can't figure out what it was. I posted something, and somebody said, "Did you see what they posted over on ARFCOM?" I'm like, no, because I don't watch ARFCOM. And then they showed me what they were talking about, and that's where I found out about the prices, or I mean the income, I guess, of the various nonprofits.
Right.
So I figured we could look at that, because to me that seemed super interesting. So I'm going to try to screen share. I think that's the easiest thing to do. I'm guessing nobody looked at this thing I'm talking about. So I got some.
I know I was sort of playing devil's advocate in the chat when you did it the last time, but there is some legitimate things. I think that if the NRA wants to bring people like me back on board, that they really need to change in how they do business. And it's not.
So let's look at it first before we start throwing opinions out there, right? So basically, I went to, like I say, I was minding my business and I posted something, and I think it was, I can't remember. Somebody posted about ARFCOM, and ARFCOM had gone online and looked at. Did they only look at 3, or did they look at 4? They looked at 4, I think, of the organizations, and they found some tax stuff that would tell you their income for the year, how much they were paying on salaries each year, and then what they were paying on advertising. I don't remember if they had a 3rd or a 4th one in there or not, but whatever it was, they were only looking at the Firearms Policy Coalition, the Second Amendment Foundation, Gun Owners of America, and NRA. And they basically took the number that their income each year and did some kind of math with the salaries to suggest a percentage that they're using for their, that was what it was. They had another number that was the number that they're spending on their projects, basically. And they were doing, that ARFCOM article did some kind of math to suggest a percentage that was their own math of, to compare these 4 organizations. And I was like, oh, it's kind of interesting. but I'm always skeptical when I see very limited data and results coming out of just one number, like data like that, coming up with results out of just one.
If you manipulate a table, you can get it to say a lot of what you want.
Yeah, you look at the one numbers you want, and then you can say whatever you want about it. So anyway, what they did do though is they linked to this place called ProPublica, I think, and it's some kind of organization where all you got to do is type in the name of the nonprofit, and it gives you their most recent tax documents, like literally a scan of their tax documents. And once I figured out you could do that with any nonprofit, there's no possible way I'm going to stop with just the main organizations. For example, Second Amendment Foundation is also Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms. So taking the numbers from just Second Amendment Foundation isn't the whole picture, right? And then there's other organizations such as NAGR, right? And then we got NSSF, the people that run SHOT Show. Where are they in this whole mix? So that's what I started to look at. So this first graph is FPC, GOA, and the Second Amendment Foundation combined with Citizens Committee. So when you combine Citizens Committee and SAF, they're bigger than GOA. And I would have not thought that. I thought GOA was much bigger. Now, I got other graphs in here. That's the one that they used on that article. They just compared FPC, Second Amendment Foundation on its own, which makes it look smaller than GOA, and then GOA. So the blue is how much money they have in income. The orange is how much they're paying their people, their salaries, and the yellow is how much advertising they're doing. So you can see that they're all doing some different percentages or valuation. I think I can make this bigger. And then this one is that first one again. Now this one is those three with NSSF, the people that run SHOT Show. So NSSF dwarfs them. They're not even significant. Like they're tiny compared to this yellow is what they pay for SHOT Show. This orange is what they pay their people. And this blue is, this is what they pay to advertise SHOT Show. This blue is what they pay for SHOT Show. Or is what their money that they pay throughout the year to do stuff. I'm guessing SHOT Show is a pretty big chunk of that. So then you bring in NAGR. You're like, wow, that's a lot of money, right? Then you bring in NAGR. Well, they're making more than everybody. Except for NSSF. And then if you go down to everybody, there's NRA. So FPC, SAF, GOA, even NAGR, and NAGR is, quite a bit bigger. They're bringing in $6 million. Look at that salary for NAGR. That orange part is the salary for an organization that you never heard of that pulls in $6 million and has that 2.2 million in salaries. They do that much in advertising. You've never heard of them. They are that effective in bringing in money. And then you bring in NRA and people are like, oh, his suits or whatever. Yeah, his suits are in there. Bigger budget than everybody put together. Bigger budget than all of SHOT Show just in advertising. Oh, that's so horrible. The NRA must be ruined, right? It's horrible. They're so bad. Except look at how much money they got. Look at how much money they're bringing in. And anybody who thinks that that's all going to Wayne's suits is obviously not paying attention to the big picture. So that's what I wanted to throw out there is I think that data is super interesting. But obviously we aren't going to all agree on what it represents, but let's go.
I had some time to reflect on the comments that I posted when you brought this up last. So I'm not out saying, when I brought up what I brought up, I was not out to say that the NRA was bad, right? What I was trying to put through in text, and text sucks at conveying inflection and intent. My point was really not that how much money they're making. I think it's great that they're making that much money, but they're pushing money away from people like me that were either I sort of broke it down in my head, right? So I was really bothered by how much money they spent on paid collection people that call you up, robocall you and ask for money, right? Now, granted, they're getting money from it and they're going to keep doing it because they're getting money from it. But it was really a turnoff for me. I can't change that bothered me, right? Because they literally spent more trying to get money from me than I'd ever given them, right? I'm not saying that they can't keep doing that. But the other part is they never do a really good job of telling you what they're actually doing. I mean, occasionally you get a thing at like SHOT Show or whatever where they put together a little video that nobody else see out here because it doesn't get publicity, that probably talks about what they did this year. When I was still in the NRA, I'd contribute to the NRA ILA, their individual legislative association, or whatever that stood for, right? But it's not like you got an annual report of, hey, look, we spent money here and got this accomplished. And even if they failed, it'd be nice to know what they spent. So like my only reference that I had, especially when I was really pissed, which was around the time that we got that law shoved up our butt in Washington, was Bloomberg spent 2.4 million purportedly on his campaign for that thing that he put up, right? The NRA ILA did show up, but they spent like, I hate to say the exact number because I don't remember, but it was around maybe, let's say, $180,000, right? If they made as much money in their coffers in that pool that year that you just showed me, the year that happened, somebody there is not putting their money where it needs to be, because that was something that could have been affected, right? And I'm not saying that my state's more important than other states. It just shows their proportional response to, I mean, Bloomberg's spending 2.4 million and they're spending like less than 200 grand, right? Which is a drop in their bucket.
To be fair, the NRA's yearly money revenue given or received is less than honestly, Bloomberg's, I mean, he's making more just in straight up like money sitting in the bank account.
Well, I understand that Bloomberg's,
so, I mean, he's able to spend
is bigger than theirs,
he wants to, you know.
But in the end, in this state, X amount of dollars was spent by one party. The other party didn't come anywhere close to spending matching funds, and he got what he wanted, right? And there is a point, at some point, you would think that there's a point where he's only going to put his money where it's effective, right? Because if he knew for a fact that he was going to spend $2.4 million, but he was going to get shut down, he wouldn't spend the $2.4 million because it wasn't effective, right?
So
and
if
that's
you've got
sort of this background conversation that we need to have. And if
you're talking about specifics, you're talking about specifics in a state. So if you got a poker player that's on your side and a poker player on the other side, do you care about their lifetime poker score, or do you care about a hand? Because they can screw up a hand really good, and you could hold it against them forever. And that's paying attention to one point, not the plot of all their points. Mm-hmm. So did they screw up that time? And did they really screw up? Because I don't know if that's what Ghost was saying, but if you've got an adversary who's got an unlimited pocketbook and they've spent this much money and you've done your math and you've decided that it's worth it up until whatever, I don't know. I'm not trying to justify their shit because I do not know. This was ancient history and I'm not in your state. So, and it all is coming out after the fact. What was happening in real time is different than what we know now after the fact. But whatever their strategy was, if they determined that the more we spend, he's just going to spend enough to counter it, and we don't know what his cutoff is. So we've got X amount of money. He has X times 10. So are we going to spend our whole nut on Washington and burn out and ruin everything else because of Washington, and he's going to just not even take a hit in the long term? Or are we going to see that he's not bluffing over there? He wants it, and we got to walk away. I'm not saying that was their position, but I'm saying if that was their position, do you tell them you can't play cards anymore because you made a decision that I don't agree with? Yeah, as the loser in that game, I can get it, but there's way more going on than
So the reason that I brought this up is I knew enough of the facts to bring it up, and don't get focused in on that. My concern is, like, the NRA didn't come to the community and say, hey, Bloomberg put, $2.5 million into this, and we know that he put twice that much in there, and it's not the fight to have. I'd be okay with knowing that or hearing something from them, but we never hear that. We don't get that kind of feedback. We're not getting that level of discussion with them.
I'm not going to justify whatever their lack of response is, because that's expecting us to respond to something that we can't know or give a shit about. So how the hell can we know their point of view and how they decided to not act, right? right?
Right.
So that's beyond what we can do. So let's move on beyond that. One of the things you say, you're upset that the NRA markets to you and it's not effective to you. So that's great. You're an activist. You're somebody who pays attention. The NRA is there for the people that don't. The NRA is there for the people that guns to them is a guitar. It is a fork as opposed to a spoon, or it's a Harley as opposed to a Kawasaki or something. It's a pickup compared to a convertible. It's just a thing for them. It's one of the it's a hamburger or else, a different kind of food. Some people just don't care about guns, but they want to care about freedom or something. NRA gives them that thing to click onto. So yes, it doesn't market to you, but if it markets to $350 million worth of people who are those 80% in the middle that earlier in the conversation, we were saying, how do we reach out to those 80 million people? Let's take a look at something recently. We've got the NRA's Instagram.
Can you look up real quick what their current membership level is? Just because
No.
I want to make a point.
Because I've got this open. Feel free to bring that up. So we've got the NRA's Instagram open, FPC's Instagram open, Gun Owners America, and Second Amendment Foundation. And it doesn't even matter what the issue of the day is, because there's always an issue of the day. If I hover over, I see 24,000, 42,000, 38,000, 69,000, 79,000, 42,000, 53, 56. I don't see one below 50,000 reach with 2 million followers. If I go to the next closest would be Gun Owners of America with 271, like 1/16, one portion of the followers. And we've got 781, 188, 100, 34, 362. That was the Second Amendment Foundation. Gun Owners of America were 7,000 with the Texas constitutional carry, 7,000, 20,000, 2,000, 20,000, 20,000, 14, 10, and 10. Then we get Firearms Policy Coalition, just to put rounded numbers on. We got 3,000, 15, 20, 5, 13, and 10. So we can see that the response that you would get to the messaging going out to those of us who are in the 10% of gun owners who are enthusiasts, who are activists, we're getting the messaging at the level of about 10 to 20,000. NRA is not reaching to us. It's reaching to 2 million people that follow the NRA. I'll bet you if I asked the 7,000 people that clicked on this one from GOA, how many of you subscribe to NRA? I'll bet you it's less than 1,000. So this 2 million is people that we don't talk to. These are people that ride a motorcycle and worry about chop suey all day and make competitive birthday cakes on weekends, and they care about guns, so they vote NRA, whatever NRA says. You know what I'm saying? They're reaching that. That's what that money is spent on, is reaching people who could give a shit and come in the droves, the tens of thousands, for stupid posts that we all mock and we all laugh at. Like, oh, the NRA isn't even paying attention, except that they're moving huge herds.
They are literally the
beyond the herds thing.
Okay.
In a way, we made this about money, and I was leading to a point, and we got sort of lost in it here.
Well, I'm using money to indicate the amount of attention or effort, but yeah, you're an activist. The NRA isn't searching for activists. They are not catering to activists, and they don't message.
They want money to reach those other people, right? And
you got hit by the money shower, dude. Look how much money they spent on advertising. They spend more money than we spent on the entire NSSF just on advertising. You got hit in the residual that the person who, doesn't give a shit about guns needs to be advertised at. I get a free knife, I'm doing it.
They are literally
let me get it in here, and then we can move on from here.
Jesus Christ.
I'm of means where I would contribute 5 times more than what the membership was if I was in a relationship with them where I understood what they were doing and let's say there's currently based on the numbers in 2018, there's 5.5 million. So we're going to go up from there, right? So let's say they got 7 million members, right? If there's another 2 million members that can bring in incrementally more than what they're currently getting, how much more money would we have to reach the rest of those masses? And then I would care a little bit less about the other stuff. But when we can't have a conversation where we understand what the organization is about, or where they're directing their money, or what we should be focused on, their messaging is just hosed, and that's my
But here's
point.
the thing. They don't care. They don't care. They're not after you. They're after the exact people that will spend their $15 a year to forget about the two-way for the rest of the year. Here's my $15. Go do your thing. They don't want people to look at what they're spending on. They're not after them. They're not
But
after
to what
Things
end?
that you're
Because
frustrated about is the things you're never going to see. They can't offer that to people who don't give a shit about that and don't value that. When you value that, you don't get the attention of the masses. So you're asking an ice cream vendor to offer cookies, and they can't. They're there to offer ice cream. That's a bad example. But anyway, they're definitely not going to cater to anyone's individual thing. Here, dude, here's what's frustrating. You act like we're fucking defending the NRA. We're simply telling you, after years of watching people get frustrated at an aircraft carrier not paying attention to the fish in the water in front of it, that, you know what, you're never going to get an aircraft carrier to care about the dolphin it runs over. You know, it's going to happen. So you can either not look at the dolphins or you can quit expecting it, but you're not going to get an aircraft carrier to turn on a dime or stop or be concerned about every dolphin. It can't happen. It's an aircraft carrier. So if you're asking the NRA to cater to you as an activist who wants to bring in more people, they have that. It's called being an NRA. What do they call it when you run the NRA meetings? When you run a local NRA meeting, you are NRA fundraiser. It's just like being an NRA instructor. They have a method for that, and you have to be all NRA. You know, it's those people that wear all the NRA gear and the stuff, and they're constantly coming up with raffles and things. They have ways for people to rah, but they're football players. They don't care about your chess game. Like they're not interested in that. They're there to have big crowds watching football. If you're a football player, they'll point at you. If you're a cheerleader, they'll pay you. And if you're a crowd, they'll charge you. But they're not there to worry about the chess game that's, you know, happening underneath the stands.
All right, so help me get to where you're at. So we say that we don't say, it's the truth. The NRA is the biggest organization for gun owners, right? How do the membership get them to do the things that matter to them? Because that's obviously not happening.
That's a completely different conversation. So if we're going to talk about NRA and how to change it or deal with it, that's a different conversation than NRA compared to the other organizations. So we can have that, but the answer is the short answer is it's a giant organization run by a board of like 12 people and something like 7 million members. What are you going to do? Talk to 7 million members and try to get them to do something? That happened in 1977 when Neil Knox organized through fax machines and a little auto dialer and calling people on the phone. He organized at the NRA annual meeting. It was called the October Revolt, or the 77 Revolt. He organized the membership to all put on a hat at noon. They all put on an orange hat at noon. And that signified to the board that the members were not satisfied with the projected or with the proposed move of the NRA out to Colorado or out to New Mexico or wherever it was going to go. And that was enough to form the ILA, NRA, ILA thing you're talking about, and to start confusion or just whatever. Like they didn't all agree on what direction the NRA should go. The NRA has always been composed of marksmen, sportsmen, hunters, now trainers, law enforcement, range operators, wildlife management people, everything in between, youth shooting, right? There's tons of stuff. I
grew up in youth shooting, so
there's a lot of people that have their hands on the NRA. Some people that are involved in the shooting sports could potentially say, I don't want to be in politics. Somebody who's involved in hunting could say, we have to be involved in politics. And it's a member organization of 7 million members. When the people get together for the annual meeting in 2019, we had an opportunity to go in and stand up to the board and do something. We had the most motivation that we've ever had towards the NRA and awareness of the NRA structure and the futility, but the possibility and the potential. And we knew what the realistic situation was. And we had a NRA annual meeting. I forgot what state it was in. It was either Knoxville or Nashville. It was Indianapolis. Yeah. And, you know, the meetings It's called the NRA annual meetings. The meetings happen, and there's a giant show associated with it. It's like basically the same. You got to pick up the same booths that go to SHOT Show, set up and have basically show and tell with all their stuff, all their products. NRA members can go to that for nothing, so they show up and they think it's like their version of SHOT Show, and they ignore the room next door where the board is saying things like, should we be jerks? Should we do whatever we feel like? Whatever we want to do, let's do it. All right, thanks for voting or not voting. And they go and do whatever they feel like doing. So that was the closest thing we ever had since 1977 that I'm aware of, where people were paying attention. And the YouTubers and the people that could have motivated people to fill that room were out there shaking hands with Glock or having a shake and bake or whatever the hell they call it, meet and greet, and, you know, paying more attention to fame and fortune than changing the world. So, yeah, it's tough to change the NRA because you first have to motivate 7 million members of the NRA to give a shit about something together. And then you have to somehow figure out how to change an organization that has some rules or whatever that say, hey, you know, you can't change us. Like, you can't make us do what we don't want to do. But, and then that's in a dynamic where the state of New York is challenging it, like has basically a razor blade to its jugular. It's a big slimy jerk, basically, because of these 12 people running it like a big slimy jerk. You got that membership that dumbly pays whatever, you said 15, but I think it's more like $30 a year. 15 of it gets to the NRA, 15 of it goes to advertising, but we know they spend a lot on advertising to make it happen. And they effectively become the giant dumb block that the Bloomberg wastes all his time and effort on. Literally all his time and effort. Every single campaign that's been done on by the other organizations, because the NRA is shadowing it. Or am I wrong?
Oh, ironically, in 2019 at the NRA meetings, the vast majority of people that actually got a chance to stand up and speak to the board, the unified message was, we want transparency. We want to know. Well, look what happened a year later. The NRA took a hard fall because people started looking into their finances and started finding these suits and these jets and all that. The people stood up to the board and said, we want transparency. And look what happened.
I mean, I guess I wouldn't describe it just like that. But I mean, effectively, yes. I mean, maybe
I don't know where to go
from
here,
because
because
there were people that were saying, we want transparency. We want to know where the money's going. So it's not like you're the only one, Luke, that wants that. There were a lot of people that stood up and said, we just want transparency. And they
this is my
had to
conundrum, right?
acknowledge that.
So I have referred plenty of people over time to become NRA members because they were our biggest push, right? So my real conundrum right now is, with what we're saying about how lost that board is or whatever, why would I want to support them continuing bad behavior financially? It just, I just
NRA
don't
is
square
a
with
train.
that.
NRA is a train, and it's a big train, and it's on a track. It's not like it's running rampant. It's on a track, and it's being run by a bunch of jerks, right? And they're not stopping to let anybody on who can do nothing about it. So you jump on the train. You definitely don't need to give them gas. I'm not suggesting that people need to, you know, unless you have a current lifetime membership, you want to retain that because that's what gives you a voting membership in the NRA, and it costs nothing pretty much because you already have it. So you might as well keep your voting ability. But if you're not, and you're just one of these people who are satisfied to do nothing, then do nothing. Nobody gives a shit if you do nothing. I mean, it's America. You can do nothing all you want. So do nothing. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking about everybody. I'm saying my suggestion here wasn't we need to go support the NRA. We just have to have a realistic awareness that the NRA is a giant battleship or a giant train that's on this track. We don't have to give it any more nuclear fuel. We don't have to give it any more coal. But we want to jump on board and kick the people out the driver's seat. And then once we got control of it again, you give it coal and you give it nuclear fuel and you keep going. But yeah, the NRA has a lot of ability. It's an aircraft carrier. Right now, it's an aircraft carrier that goes around doing promotional stunts for funds. And it becomes, you know, the block so that it gets in the way of stuff from attacking us. But yeah, it could be a formidable ally if we actually had people on board who, you know, were ambitious. So sending people over, I don't know. I think that's an individual choice. Maybe it depends on the person. Some people need the NRA. I mean, the NRA is a perfect match for some people, and it's all they'll ever need, and that's fine. You know, let them people hook up to it. If you know somebody who's an activist and they're going to be frustrated as hell with the NRA, I wouldn't send them to the NRA. I wouldn't talk shit about it. I will refuse to talk shit about it. I'll talk shit about the people that are content to sit around and do nothing and suggest that's action. But I'm not talking to you. I'm talking about the millions of people who sit around saying the NRA is doomed and we should just watch it burn.
Right. And I'm not saying burn it. I'd be more of along the lines of let's fix it. But beyond all of that,
well, there's one organization called what is it called? 2a.org, or which one is it? There's one organization in Colorado, two dudes in Colorado in Pincus that
2ao.org, yeah.
2AO, thanks. So there's one organization that pays attention to what's going on. They go to the board meetings and they pay attention, and like me and one other person show up and watch that chat. It just does not get a lot of support, because many people are more willing to suggest that it's an impossible mission to take out the board of the NRA. So there's very little stuff to send you to. There is no like campaign to change the board. All there is an awareness group of like a couple of people called 2ao.org. So there is no like, what would you call it, like faction that's in there to try to do something. Every once in a while, an individual board member will run for the board and say, hey, I'm trying to change the NRA. But I mean, it's very difficult for anybody to get behind, because everybody thinks their vote doesn't matter, and that, you know, one person can't change nothing, and everybody gets fatalistic, whatever the word is. So I can't tell you the answer. I'm never going to tell you to not support the NRA, but I think I will stop short of telling other people to, spend money on it.
Well, I think the one thing that we have to acknowledge, whether we like it or not, is that the NRA is the big dog. It's the massive dog. It's not just the big dog, it's the massive dog. And they position themselves over the years to be the beacon, quote unquote, of the Second Amendment in the political realm. So it's not going to go anywhere. Like you said, last year was probably the most treacherous year the NRA's seen in a long time, and it still made a crap ton of money. So once again, I mean, you don't have to support them. I don't support them, but the mere fact that you think you're going to change them by not sending them your $15, they're gaining new people every year. That's crazy.
Yeah, they don't give a shit about $15. So it would be interesting, because these links go to this place, and you can get I'll go to this one, right? If I open this in a new window, it'll take you to here. Oh wait, did I go to the right place? I guess I need to go just to the NRA specifically. So it'll give you 2019, 18, 17, 16. So somebody could go in and write these numbers down. I guess we can look at them real quick, because you said it was a lot of money. Well, is it a lot of money this year because they're getting attacked, right? So it says 291, 352 last year, 311, 366 the year before that, 336. So it's actually a little bit down this year than it's been by about 50 grand, or no, I'm saying 50 million. And then looks like it started being big in 2013. Look at that, $100 million difference between 12 and 13. Where am I missing? Is that, oh, that's Obama? Oh shit, that's what we were just talking about. Yeah, so that's what we were just talking about. So it made $100 million. So we made Every Second Matters. They made $100 million. Who's better off?
Right. I think you get screwed in that deal, Gene.
I guess you can only get them going back to, oh no, you can get them going all the way back. Everyone you click on will be their form, and this website doesn't bother to duplicate the info up here. So you could go back to 2004 and pull all the data from all of these organizations. Imagine somebody who's got the number type of brain and could figure out a way to take that information and visualize it for everybody to see how the NRA fluctuates over time, how they react to what's going on, and then how much these organizations have grown. So let me ask Luke this. You've heard of Second Amendment Foundation, obviously. Gun Owners of America, you were aware of them, right? What about Firearms Policy Coalition?
I'd heard them mentioned once or twice before you brought it up here, but I don't even know their mission statement or anything like that.
Right on. So I think most people today would say those are like the four big ones. And then at the same time, if they're telling you that, they're going to go, but I don't like the NRA, right? I mean, people can't even say that. They can't even acknowledge the NRAs. And how much did Bloomberg pay for that? Nothing. People just decided on their own. Let's just throw away our own aircraft carrier because it's cool to hate our aircraft carrier, and because the guy who's driving it's a jerk, and the people that are behind him are jerks too.
I'm not purporting to shut the NRA down. I'm
not talking to you, dude. I'm talking to the not decades, but a lot of people out there for years have been more than willing to watch the NRA burn because they perceive all that money in that big pile. If you listen to them, go listen to a conversation with people that don't, I guess, own businesses or like, I don't know. But anyway, they'll look at this number and go, oh, imagine if that was distributed to these other organizations, without realizing that if these organizations could, they would have some of that money. People are not interested in the shit that these organizations are talking about. When people are all wrapped up in this, like, the internet tells me what I want to hear, so I must be super right about everything. You know, people don't think about that most of the world don't care about what they care about. And NRA is able to hit that sweet spot for people that, hey, remember you do care about this. Remember your grandpa cared about this. Remember grandma mattered. Like, throw us a couple of bucks. These organizations ain't recovering that money. When the NRA, if the NRA were to crumble and this money disappears because there's no one to throw it to, guess who gets it? The government. Nobody's getting that money. It just disappears. Yeah, these people aren't like, oh, I desperately need to support another organization. They'll just be like, oh, I guess we don't have guns anymore. Let's turn that one in that's in the closet.
Or they'll say, hey, I got $15 extra a year now, you know?
So some of these people we're addressing, they're what I call sheeple, right? They're sheep. They just want to be tended and cared for and not bothered by the big bad wolf or whatever. So the NRA, they send them their $15 or $30 a year, and they get the occasional, hey, we want more money for whatever thing, they'll tolerate it, and that's okay. Yeah, and I'm not saying burn. I'm not saying burn the battleship.
There's a lot of. Go ahead.
I'm just saying that there's a lot of people that don't have a fight in them. So this is their way of fighting, is sending $15 saying, I don't have it in me. I don't have the time. I don't have the energy. Here's my $15. Go fight for me. That's where a lot of it is.
I'm not asking for those 7 million people to become advocates like we are. I get that part. I just don't get how, with a membership that big, that 12 individuals can let, I don't know the exact number, but it can't, all 7 million people that they have or whatever can't be happy with what's going on, and how 12 people can have dominion over 7 million.
Dude,
is just
bizarre. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. But if someone's investment is $15, what do they care if they're like, I'm not going to give them $15 next year, and they've done something about it because that's all they've got invested in it. So don't give them, you know what I'm saying? Don't lay a bunch of trip on a bunch of people that just don't know or care. So think about it. If you grew up and you just don't care about guns, think of something you could care less about. Carrot shredders, right? Probably somebody making carrot cake out there desperately gives a shit about how carrot shredders are, right? Like there's probably gooder ones and shittier ones or something. So, you know what I'm saying? Like you could care less about carrot shredders. And if somebody said to you tomorrow, oh, they're going to change the law and carrot shredders are going to be illegal because some little kids scrape their knuckles on a carrot shredder, this one style. And then they're like, but carrot cakes will never be the same, right? Like, what do you care? So there's got to be people like that that are the same with guns. We got 360 million people in this country. We're talking 7 million members of the NRA. 360 million people in the country, 7 million members of the NRA. So they're able to rake in some money from people that are like, again, like grandpa liked guns. I got a shotgun. Like that's a lot of people. But
we've got to have 190 million gun owners, and I'm not saying they all got to participate with the NRA, but what the hell are those other 190 million people doing? Just keeping their head low and crossing their fingers that it works.
All right, quit laying trips on them. That was old. I mean, I'd say that's what we used to do in 13, and that was okay in 13. But this is 21. This is a lot of years later, right? There are tons of efforts, and I'm not going to allow those efforts to go uncovered or unpointed at. So, yeah, it's frustrating, but who cares? Look at the real number, 360 million gun owners, and we're talking about 7 million NRA members. And that's only because we're looking at these numbers right here. So let's forget about them completely. Let's look at those 360 million people again. How do you effectively reach those 360 million people? it's not possible. So we know right off the bat, you're never going to reach them all. Otherwise, they'd all be wearing Nikes, right? We'd all be eating the same something. If someone could reach us all. So the best you can hope for is to reach a lot of them. The way you reach a lot of people is with diversity in different ways, right? Lots of different nets. Just one, and I'm going to bring it up because I got to bring it up every show. Just one of the organizations that's changing the face of gun ownership is the DC Project, where 50 ladies go to DC and they meet with representatives. They get into groups of 5 when everything goes according to plan. And then a lady from a gun restrictive state and a lady from a gun friendly state and some kind of mix will go to each of each other's representatives as a group of 5. Each of those ladies is a different flavor completely. Grandmas, kids, competitive shooters, hunters, industry, just bought a gun, I'm a victim, I was a shooter my whole life, completely diverse. They go in, they meet with representatives, and they say, if you need to know anything about guns, we're here to offer education and awareness. They have meetings for the representatives to offer them some talking points and some counterpoints to some of the narratives that the antis offer. That kind of stuff over time changes the ability of the people who represent us to get the full picture, the full story. So there's organizations like that don't need vast numbers. That's 50 ladies that are changing that from that what's the word, like that important of a focus. Those ladies are able to effectively do it, just like special operations versus battle of attrition. If you got every fat white dude who owns a gun yell and shall not be infringed, it does almost nothing compared to having moms, grandmas, sisters, cousins, little old ladies, young women trying to get grants to go to college, women on the Olympic teams, right? All different flavors and colors and shapes and sizes go into DC and saying, we're here if you ever have questions about what firearms owners really are. Moms can't, the Bloomberg plants can't pay for that. They cannot create that because all they do is exploit victims. All they do is pay for marketing campaigns. Since they can't counter that, give them, the ladies, a minute. That's just one organization who's doing that. There's organizations representing different areas of the gun community that are efforting and figuring out how to work together. So yeah, the NRA and its issues is one thing. It's insignificant and it's a distraction from what Every Second Matters can look at, because we're not held down by nothing and we're not sponsored by nobody. Imagine if the actual interested people, the hundreds of thousands or probably even thousands of us who actually give a shit, once we become more and more aware of the people that are doing the work, we can be more effective at supporting them. Once we're able to effectively make aware the people who could use support, industry isn't stupid. They're going to know where to shuffle support. And then we have effective change taking place. That becomes something that the NRA, who's changing, the NRA is what it is, but they're definitely changing because they're changing. So they're going to be looking at what other people are doing successfully and failing at. And, they're going to see things, and potentially we could be leading through example or just changing the game completely. Mm-hmm. But anyway, that's just a couple of examples. I don't know if you guys want to throw anything out there on this angle.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that we have to look at is understanding the roles of each of these organizations. There's a lot of people that will criticize the NRA. I'm one of them. But you said it earlier in passing, but you said it a lot, but the NRA could be the best thing that happens for the gun lobby. Let them be the one that gets, to this very day, when you hear anything Second Amendment in Washington, it's, we got to fight back against the NRA. We got to beat the NRA. Let the NRA be the punching bag, because they are the big dog and they do have the money. Let them be the punching bag while GOA, SAF, and FPC are working at the state level, ground level, behind the scenes. Let the NRA take the light. Let them be the punching bag. And that allows the other organizations to do really solid work while the NRA's taking the punches. Let them be the big dog, because the big dog can be very, very valuable in a big fight.
Yeah.
And I'm not satisfied with NRA. I would definitely be
no.
interested to see somebody come up with a plan and implement it, change the board out, and then with a dynamic like a board that, it's a pendulum. Whenever you change something, it's going to go the opposite way for the most part. Rarely do things change and then barely change. So if it changes into a direction of the NRA being an aircraft carrier in the regards that it can lift and offer assistance and support to smaller organizations and move them from here to there. Like, let's take your membership and make it most effective here where they need the fight. And the NRA becomes a facilitator and an air traffic controller and whatever you call like quartermaster for the rest of the fights. Holy moly. Like, then that would be amazing. And then all those members who are like, oh, I pay them $15 instead of getting a contact from the membership organization they're a part of that says, oh, be scared, send us more money, be scared, think about putting us in your will, right? Instead, it was like, here's what happened this month. Here's what happened this month. Here's where we need your help next month, like in person. Here's where we need your help in writing. Here's where we need your help on the phone. And you know what I'm saying? Like, here's the people that are doing it. And it would just be something like that. What would it be like with that NRA? And then would all the people, well, first, what would it be like with that NRA? And then second, would all the people that want to see it burned down today acknowledge that that's a potential? Or do they, you can't answer, but I suspect all those people would say, well, it'll never happen, so we shouldn't even attempt to get that in there.
Yeah, and I'm on board with that. I mean, what you brought forward. I don't know. I guess I was trying to relate to other people my trust. Something that I grew up as a NRA youth shooter, and I could have bought a life membership back then. I think it was like for a youth back then it was $200 or $400. I forget.
Like $550 when I was a little kid. Yeah, if you were buying it as a kid.
Yeah, that would have been in '88, whatever it cost in '88 as a junior shooter. But anyhow, I just lament the fact that it is the biggest bully in the schoolyard or whatever, but it's being misused.
Well, let's kind of go back to where this whole thing started, and you were talking about that 3 to 5%. And let's say it's up to 10%. The 10% of the gun community that actually does give a shit about what's really going on, that 10% are going to be the ones that are supporting FPC, SAF, and GOA. Yep. The 80% that we're talking about, that's who's supporting the NRA. Now, is that a bad thing or a good thing? Who knows? At least they're supporting someone. At least they're not supporting Bloomberg. Okay, so we can take that side if we want to. But you were talking about in Washington, the NRA only spent $180,000. Well, let's be real. If the NRA wasn't there, would the SAF or GOA be able to spend the same $180,000 in Washington? There's no way in hell. So at least they got that. I'm not trying to take sides with NRA by any means, because I'm not a fan of them at all. But once again, they are what they are, and at least they're around. At least they've still got 7 million members. It could be 1 million members, and 6 million of the people are putting their money elsewhere. At least they're in the fight still. So I don't know. I mean, you can look at it. You can make silver out of shit all you want. Or you can make shit out of silver. But, at least that $7 million, that $350 million isn't going to Bloomberg instead. So at least there's that.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Well, just to beat a dead horse, then the thing that people look at that 350 and go, oh, blah, 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 because they're not looking at like all the stuff that I don't even think we can conceptualize, because no one's ever bothered to defend their position or whatever. But there's all the ranges, and there's all the hunter stuff, and there's all the wildlife stuff, and there's all the safety stuff, and there's all the people that depend on it. So like you get into law enforcement stuff and instructor stuff, and into probably just safety in other realms. I'm sure health, the doctors and stuff probably depend on NRA stuff somewhere.
They give a lot of grants. Sure, absolutely. Yeah,
that's true. They're also spending money on stuff. They also run all the competitive sports that everybody else quits. That's again, like, so the government started, and then they're like, oh, well, we don't want to keep running this. And then NRA's like, well, we'll keep running it. And then like Bianchi Cup, like, it's over. Oh, no, we'll keep running it. So the NRA keeps some competitive sports going so that there's something for people to do. Because, sometimes you got to keep a dying sport alive for maybe a generation so that they can skip a generation and people can find interested in again. Not that that's necessary, but that is the kind of stuff that they do. So when you start to add that stuff up, which I don't think anybody's going to do, and NRA probably isn't self-aware enough to bother, like you say, they're like I was saying, I don't think they care about justifying themselves to the people who aren't paying for it. You know what I mean? They only have to justify themselves to the people that are paying $15 and they're done. They don't need to justify nothing to the people that aren't paying them, right? So they're never going to do it. But if you were to break down that $350 million that they break in or that they bring in each year, like a good chunk of that is going to the stuff that they do. They only spend something like 40% of their income on other stuff. Some organizations spend 70% on salaries and advertising, only spending 30% on their core. So NRA does support a lot of stuff. And all I was going to get at with that is to say kind of the same thing, is like in a perfect future with NRA doing good stuff, then think of their distribution, the facilitation of the distribution. Is that the way I say it? Like how effectively they could get the word out if they were actually paying attention to stuff. It would be almost impossible because of all the competitive shooters and all the hunters and all the law enforcement and everybody else that they contact with, if they were to put, some sort of parallel awareness attention. Is that the way to say it? But they're not. And that's probably kickback, feedback. Again, when we're talking about that many people, some people are like, hey, I'm here for my hunting. I don't want to hear about your politics. I don't agree with these high capacity magazine people or those 3D printer kids. I don't want all that stuff. And what do you do as the NRA? Say then we're not working with anybody, or do you try to work with everybody still?
Yeah.
Or do you just work with the people that are paying you $15? I guess that's what
I guess my internal want is like you. I want to see the NFA reverse. I want to see big things gone after that have been anchored for so long that don't belong there. And you want the kids with the biggest budget to go after it, and they're not, and that's the frustrating part, right?
Yeah.
So, and I don't know that. I mean, I don't even know that there's the will if we could get the however many gun owners are out there that aren't even participating in the NRA. Is there a will that if we said, hey, if all of you, did you say it's the current gun ownership is estimated at 390 million? Is that what you were saying?
No. That's the country. I don't know what gun owners. I think everybody always has a different.
I keep hearing about 100 to 125 million gun owners.
Yeah, my personal guess would be around that 120 to 140 million mark. So, but if there was a messaging where we could tell those 140 million people, hey, if you all chipped in $20 one time, we're going to take a swing at reversing the NFA because it doesn't belong, right? Is there a will there for them to participate? Is there a mechanism to make an all call like that? We have the most widespread media ability now than we've ever had.
Yeah, if you just came up to somebody and said, hey, nice shotgun you got there, want to join this anti-suppressor thing? And they're going to go, what? But if it's like, hey, nice shotgun you got there, watch these young girls participate in an indoor 9mm pin knocking off, whatever that's called, pin shooting match with suppressors, and look how much fun your daughters are having. And it's like, they're John Wicking all over the place or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, then it's like, oh, too bad. That would be like $24,000 worth of tax stamps, or it could be none if, we turn this into an ADA thing like it is, or something. If you broach it the right way, then yes, for sure.
Well, do you even have to mention the suppressors or the NFA or anything, or just say, hey, that there's 120 million of us, and we all chipped in $20. We're going to make this giant push to ensure that our rights are never under attack again.
I thought you were going to say we're all going to chip in on one big suppressor.
That would
do that too. That'd be pretty interesting.
That'd be an awesome suppressor.
It would.
You're assuming there's 190 million people that own, or 150 million people that own guns. Care. I would say 90% of gun owners don't care about their guns except for 3 months of the year or whatever their rationale for owning a gun is. They don't care. They want to have a gun and they assume that their rights are never going to go away. That's the vast majority.
I always joke that my favorite time of year for buying guns is the second weekend in December, because deer season happens the first Monday here after Thanksgiving. So we got 2 weeks of deer season. People went out, they spent money they didn't have on a new deer rifle or something. Now they need money for Christmas. What happens? They turn right back around, sell those guns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think that the stat that should be frustrating everybody is not how the NRA is spending money. It's not what percentage of these organizations go towards the core causes. G's brought it up 11 different times. He brought it up 1,000 times. Let's just assume let's just go on the low end, 100 million gun owners. That's on the low end. 7% of those people have decided to support the NRA.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you add the other ones up. Let's say it's another 3%. At best, you're talking about 10% of the gun owners in America give a shit to support any organization. That's the real problem.
No. That's a characteristic. I don't think it's not a problem unless you create one, because if you think about the country was 3%, 2%, people do that. I mean, mostly 10% of anything would be a lot of turnout. So, everything that's ever happened that's good happened with less than 10% of people is all I'm saying. So that's just a factor of it. And I think that's important so we don't have unrealistic, like, I wish everybody was on our side. Well, why? Because no one's ever been, except for breathing air. We don't agree on much.
The revolution was started in the U.S. by 3% of the population being unhappy.
And let's be real, G, 9mm. Breathing air and 9mm.
Right. People can't agree on one, but they can all agree on the other.
Yeah.
Yep. Breathing air sucks.
Right. Well, I didn't expect to solve all the world's problems tonight.
9mm life, baby.
That was interesting to bring kind of a turnaround on it. And I wanted to throw insight at the numbers because I think it's neat that you can go to that site and just pull up tax numbers from anybody. So every state level organization is more than likely nonprofit. In my searching, they're not large enough to show up in the thing for whenever I'm not screen sharing anymore, but whenever I opened up that screen, the website will go interpret the numbers and give you some summaries if the organization is large enough or there's enough numbers involved, or if it's searched for enough. But if it's a small enough organization, they'll still have the paperwork scan there. They just won't give you the data quickly. They don't have a person go in there and retype it. So basically, I think almost any organization, I think it said in there, not just guns, but like any nonprofit organization is in that list. And you can go in there and find its tax records for at least a decade. So that's just interesting as heck, because what we do get is a lot of sports type of, what do you call, like, people that are fans of sports. Like, people want to come in and root for it and then leave. And that's most sports people, I think, right? And then there's probably a whole bunch of people that'll wear a sports shirt or get a coffee mug or something because they live in that town, and maybe for whatever their reasons are, but they never go to a sports game. They just have the sports paraphernalia around. And then there's the people that are like, oh, I care about the stats and I know every player and I've met half the players and, I know what's going on. And then there's the people that are coaches and work at the stadium and like mow the lawn and sew the uniforms and run the concession stands, and they all know behind the scenes better than anybody. And then there's the players, right? We got the same stuff happening over here, right? So I just think it's neat that we can go in and get stats like that about the size of these organizations and stuff, thinking of them as teams and things. It lets us kind of get a better idea, at least for me, because I'm curious all the time as to which of these organizations are how big they are compared to each other and how much momentum they've got. And that's the neat thing about looking at these things over time. Like, let's use one that's a horrible example. Nagger, $6 million, $2.2 million in salaries. No one's ever heard of them. They're bringing $6.6 million out of our economy, out of our culture, out of our community. Look, whenever I bring it up, barbecue jumps out. Somebody's on their payroll. So, or is it time for his show already? Oh, he's got to do his own show. I guess I'll end it here. So, but you know what I'm saying? Like $6 million and all that. Are they on the growth? Are they making money in all this? Were they at 4 million last year? Were they at 2 million last year? Were they at 12 million last year? I think that's just fascinating. You know, I'd like to see some sort of cool graph of all the different organizations over the last decade to see what kind of, we saw that kind of spike when we went down the list of, was it NRA? Yeah, I think it was NRA. I was going through and looking at the numbers and we saw that big spike in 13. So we assumed that that spike happened for some of them. Thing is, some of them didn't even exist until 15. So, you know, did these things hit the ground and just take off? And that tells us a lot about their dedication. If an organization hit the ground and is barely growing, that's a dedicated organization compared to one that hit the ground and just skyrocketed in financial growth, right? Then they're just like, well, I might as well stay in the realm because I'm making money. They don't care what they're doing. They're just going to keep doing whatever they're doing. Anyway, I just think it's neat to get some perspective
I
on
tell
it.
you one that we need to be worried about to a certain extent is, you know, you brought up earlier, people don't realize how massive NSSF is and how much they do for behind the scenes of a lot of things. But here's the problem. I know people dog SHOT Show, but SHOT Show is how NSSF raises the vast majority of their revenue, I'm assuming. If SHOT Show doesn't happen this year, there's a chance NSSF goes away. And I don't think a lot of people realize how far NSSF actually does reach. They're involved in a lot of stuff. And SHOT Show not happening last year, and if it doesn't happen this year for some reason, there's a chance NSSF goes away, and that could be a huge hit to the industry.
Well, NSSF was created for the industry for what's the word, like to facilitate stuff. Now there is an internet now, so it's perhaps there's no need for whatever they, you know, bringing people together physically and stuff. However, we all know that there's tangible aspects to getting together and touching stuff as opposed to sending stuff all the time, and it's just not the same as, you know, not having a physical meeting. But I agree with you to the extent about SHOT Show. I just, unless they're completely inept, like unless they just have no idea how to run a business, like they got their business planning from me because I'm, you know, anyway, I can't judge because I can't do it. But unless they're just horrible at business, I could see SHOT Show being dead. But this NSSF is like a facilitator in the industry, so they're almost like SAMI or one of these other industry organizations that are kind of fulfilling a role that would normally be filled by government. Now, that's actually interesting. Since they are fulfilling a role that could potentially be filled by a government agency, some sort of a department of gun industry, some bullshit, they're doing that as a private entity, and they created themselves in the 60s because they saw that there was not cohesiveness or collaboration amongst the manufacturers and stuff. There were smaller regional attempts to get people together, but it was more of like a way to facilitate marketing and manufacturing and distribution and all that kind of stuff. But it wasn't really long-term strategic plans for the industry. And SAMI has some of that. You know, SAMI is the people that do all the consistent numbers and everything for ammunition and the pressures and all that, so that everybody's on the same, you know, everybody's consistent. They do some things that are strategic. You know, hey, if we know that they're going to make a new dumbass 9mm caliber, let's make sure that they all make it the right size because they're a bunch of yahoos, right? So they'll look at the future and make some kind of, you know, plan for 9mm or whatever for you people. But I don't know if NSSF is doing that, but I suspect that that is a part of the thing, you know, with like the whole safety and the orange vest. I mean, they've done some major successes in keeping antis from off of our backs. And that's all I'm saying is I think I would hope that they're able to keep that aspect of NSSF.
I would hope so, because, you know, there's a lot of people say, I wish the industry would get involved in politics. I wish the industry would do this, that, and the other. Well, the industry is involved. They don't filter the money to the NRA necessarily. Some of them do, but they filter the money through the NSSF. And the NSSF, like you said, I mean, NSSF is in the background of a lot of things happening. And I'm hoping the NSSF can stick around a SHOT Show, but I have a feeling that the NSSF, like I said, makes the majority of the industry donations is from SHOT Show. So unless they figure out a way to keep those industry paying them that money to do things. Like I said, I just worry the NSSF goes away, because the NSSF is involved in a lot of stuff that I think most people that has ever heard of NSSF know it
Yeah, but
because
they're
of
not that
SHOT
big
Show.
though.
You
They're
know,
like 12. They're only like 12 people and a small budget. So if you got rid of SHOT
I
Show,
know.
they would, and they could be supported by like Brownells and Midway. Like
Yeah,
they
but what I'm
say,
saying is,
like
I
they're
think
not.
most people don't know. Most people just know NSSF as SHOT Show. They don't know what actually NSF actually does. You know what I'm saying? They think, oh, they just run SHOT Show and that's it. That's not necessarily true.
No, and they've been more active in the past, and now they're, well, it kind of depends, I suppose, on who's the boss of it. Probably how ambitious they are, I imagine, or something. Whatever it is, a board, whatever it is that makes their decisions must change because they've been more ambitious and less ambitious at different times in their lifespan. All right, well, we went all over the place on that one, but it was staying with 2A. It was fun, and again, good to kind of hear from some of this perspective from original OGs of Every Second Matters, and then some of the people that jumped on more recently in Every Second Matters, keeping it all going. And we didn't have that much participation from out there, people saying hey and stuff, but thanks for jumping in and being part of the show live. That's part of the whole thing, is that this was born, the what do they call it now? Your birth parent of Every Second Matters was the live conversations. A bunch of people that didn't have any interest in the well-produced, highly scripted, fancy videos that were out there. We were just sitting around chatting, and not with some weird and motivation other than to have fun and chat about different stuff and whatever. So, yeah, interesting or fun to have the people who join in live. But if you're listening to it after the fact, you can use the comments wherever we post this over on guntube.org, video hosting platform that's focused on guns, made by gun people for gun people, and hosted in the United States, and or streaming gunstreamer.com, and another gun focused video hosting platform. There's others, and then we run this course on YouTube. So with that, Ghost, thanks to Ghost for jumping in. Thanks, Bad Marine, for jumping in. And Barbecue was just in here. He's actually doing a live show right now. I'll drop a link to the video.
Get Off My Lawn podcast.
We made him late for his own live stream, but thanks for having me out, and we can go ahead and wrap her up.
Yeah, and I'll throw a link out to Barbecue. And if you guys got anything you want to say before we head out, otherwise we'll wrap it up.
Oh, thanks for having us. This is always fun. This is exactly what Every Second Matters is. We don't have to agree, but we spent 2 hours discussing it. That's what this is all about in my eyes.
Yep, and give people something to think about. Hopefully take to your gun shop, take to your range, take to the gun show if you still go to them, and are there live conversations elsewhere, and keep that conversation about 2A going and evolving.
So let us know what you think. We'll be watching the comments wherever you find the video, over on gunstreamer.com or on guntube.org.
Thank you for supporting our projects. If you'd like to buy us a cup of coffee, check out our Patreon channel.
The guys and gals of gunwebsites.com encourages you to take a CCW class every year, practice at least once a month, and carry every day. Thank you for watching gunwebsites.com.